Speaker, I'm not going to read from the script because I want to remind people that when Jim Petro was Attorney General, it was him who initiated the Mortgage Act that protected Ohio's consumers from abusive mortgage lending practices. His forehead got worn out and bloody from beating his head against the wall in the legislature for many years, calling for that act to be adopted, to make sure consumers were protected in mortgage lending under the Consumer Sales Practices Act as they were in every other major financial transaction that they do, and even minor financial transactions. And Mr. Petro went to the legislature over and over and over again, and finally it was Senator Padgett who took up the mantle and introduced Senate Bill 185, one of the strongest mortgage lending laws protecting consumers in the nation. If only they'd done it sooner. If only they'd heeded that call sooner, we may not have the enormous financial mess we have in this country, in the state and this country today. So it's my pleasure to welcome Jim Petro.
Bill, thank you very much. I appreciate that comment, and I thought I might reference that at the end of my comments about this, because consumer protection is what the Attorney General's office is known for. I think the history of the Attorney General's office in Ohio has been one of aggressive consumer advocacy, and this is part of it. I begin by saying that last night my wife and I voted. We didn't go to any early voting location. We sat at the kitchen table because we got the ballots in the mail and decided let's get them right back. And as we're going through each issue, following each candidate, we have our debates over the candidates too. My wife and I agree on many things, but not on everything. But in any event, as we've gone through that process, we get to issue 5, and she said, now this one, do I vote yes or no? I think that's a common question. She knows what she believes in, but it's complicated to determine whether you're a yes vote or a no vote. You're a yes vote. I know that if we'd have gone to an early voting location, they'd have handed me one of these that said vote no, vote against a measure that impairs financial privacy. Rather, I would say vote yes. Vote yes for a measure that seeks to restrain greed, that seeks to give some consumer protection to those that otherwise are being worked over as consumers with financial needs, worked over by the greed of lenders who have no qualms about charging 391% interest. As Betty referenced, usury laws are nothing new. We had them when I was in the legislature in the 1980s. I remember when we raised the cap on credit card interest to 25%, and that was a debated issue at the time. This is 28%, the new measure, the measure that you're voting yes on, to reaffirm the application of the payday lending bill. And I think that's got to be the consistent reminder. Essentially the same fraud that's been perpetrated by the industry on people who are in financial distress by charging them a 391% interest rate. That same fraud is being perpetrated on the voters when they tell people that this is a Financial Freedom Act, this is a Jobs Act. That's the measure, that's the ad that we're seeing on TV all the time. Mentions nothing about usury and about abusing people from a financial interest rate standpoint. It only says it's about protecting jobs. That's nonsense. It's about protecting consumers. And I think we have every reason to encourage the retention of the law that restrains greed and that protects consumers. Bill referenced predatory lending. I think that was a scourge on Ohio for many years. We didn't have an appropriate regulatory measure. We do now with the adoption of Senate Bill 185. I did beat my head against the wall for 4 years and was very pleased working with Senator Padgett, who at the time many of you remember was my running mate when I was running that failed effort for governor. But in any event, that seeing that finally adopted by the General Assembly, seeing the General Assembly adopt this payday lending bill were all bright days for me in watching the policymakers of Ohio. I hope the voters seek to retain that. Thanks very much.